The stone, variously called the Stone of Destiny, Foundation Stone, Pillow Stone of Jacob, and other titles, is expected and is necessary to be in Jerusalem for the final construction of the final temple. The Jews believe that that temple, and not all Jews, but most of the Jews today, active in rabbinical orders that are preparing to, conduct all the rituals in the final temple as we speak, believe that all articles that were in Solomon's temple have to be returned if they're known to exist. If they're not known to exist, then it's a different matter. But all those that are known to exist must be returned and would then go into use again in the final temple. This whole idea of the Messiah and its relation, and the Messiah's relationship to the stone, and who that Messiah would be, and what would happen when the stone is returned to Jerusalem, and when the temple is built, it would be a replica of the original Solomon temple, not the Ezekiel, account. Which is what most Jews believe, the Ezekiel account. No Jews believe that the Solomon's temple is going to be rebuilt in that architectural style. But the Masons believe, if I understand them right, that when that stone finds its way to Jerusalem, it's one of the last items necessary, and that there are certain rabbinical orders that I've met today that are anticipating its return. Once it returns, then they proceed with a blueprint to take the Temple Mount and put up what they consider to be the final temple that Ezekiel described. But the stone it's all pivotal upon the return of this stone, because Solomon brought that stone in the traditions and legends in Judaism into his original temple, and upon it the incense was burned in the fire pan.
The phrase e pluribus unum, or out of many, one, appears in the banner held in the mouth of the American eagle. The word one appears a total of 7 times on the dollar bill. Ovison writes, in magical numerology, the number 7 is regarded with a special veneration. Certain texts that deal with the meanings of numbers insist that 7 stands for the complete temple. The temple he refers to is the ancient temple of God, built by King Solomon in the city of Jerusalem. Ovison goes on to say that the concept of a complete temple is symbolized by the unfinished pyramid of the Great Seal, where the symbol of a Messiah figure is also shown with the all-seeing eye, representing the capstone that will one day complete the pyramid. In other words, when the Messiah emerges, then will the temple be complete. But just who this Messiah will be is the subject of intense debate, and the clues to his identity are said to be related to the temple itself. The site of Solomon's original temple at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is still considered a sacred and holy place.
Buildings are sacred in religions. Religious buildings are sacred. So Solomon's temple is sacred.
The Knights Templar were specifically named in reference to this ancient site. They were known as the Poor Knights of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon.
The Knights Templar lived on the Temple Mount. Today, the Temple Mount has on it the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Knights Templar had their headquarters in Al-Aqsa Mosque when they were there. So the association between this arcane direction and tradition in Europe with the Knights Templar and the temple of the Temple Mount is direct.
The sacred nature of the temple was handed down from the Templars to the Freemasons, who are said to have originated from the ancient Knights. Masonic philosopher Albert Pike wrote that every Masonic lodge is a temple of religion. Another Masonic philosopher, Albert Mackey, wrote that Of all the objects which constitute the Masonic science of symbolism, the most important, the most cherished by the Mason, and by far the most significant, is the Temple of Jerusalem. The spiritualizing of the temple is the first, the most prominent, and the most pervading of all the symbols of Freemasonry. Take from Freemasonry its dependence on the temple, and the system itself would at once decay and die.
The temple was critical to Judaism. It was the heart of Judaism.
The first Jewish temple, built by King Solomon, was destroyed by the Babylonians in 587 BC.
The temple became a necessity for the existence of Judaism. So when it was destroyed, the longing for another temple in the Babylonian exile was, primary.
The foundation for a second temple was laid by Zerubbabel when the first Jews returned from their captivity in ancient Babylon.
First thing, when Jews are able to return, they build a temple. There's Zerubbabel and Ezra and Nehemiah come together. There's a temple built. It's added on to over the centuries until you end up with Herod's temple.
This second temple was in existence during the time of Christ and the apostles. But it would also be destroyed, a terrible event that Jesus himself had prophesied. The scripture says that the disciples came to show Jesus the buildings of the temple, and Jesus said unto them, See ye not all of these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And when ye shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that its desolation is nigh. And so it came to pass that the second temple was destroyed with the fall of Jerusalem in 70 A.D. Yet in the aftermath of its terrible destruction would emerge the dream for a third temple, and what some believe will be the final temple of all time.
This arcane connection to Freemasonry has its roots in the longing for the temple, the longing for the final temple, for the ultimate temple where Hagoyim, where non-Jews pray with Jews, as the old books, the last old books of the Old Testament predict will happen. When does that temple get built? The idea of that temple is central to Freemasonry, the Knights Templar, and of this there is no doubt. They've all expressed it. All these arcane societies have let it be known that this is really ultimately a central goal. They seem to all gravitate toward there being a temple, a need for a temple, except Orthodox Muslims who say, no, we're the last religion. These buildings are fine, thank you very much. Become a Muslim and you can pray in them and hang out on the Temple Mount, which is not going to happen. So that leads to a pretty ugly likelihood. If people who want a temple get their way, there's going to be a bloodbath there.
And what will all these things mean for the future destiny of America? According to David Oveson, it was Manly Hall who influenced the placement of 72 stones on the Great Pyramid of the dollar bill, since the number 72 is said to be a magical number in the occult. It was also Hall who taught that the American eagle was a cleverly disguised phoenix bird. In his writings, he documents this account from the 1st century A.D. There is a certain bird which is called a phoenix, and when the time of its dissolution draws near that it must die, it builds itself a nest. But as the flesh decays, a certain kind of worm is produced. According to this account, it is from this worm that the phoenix is reborn. This concept of a phoenix worm in its nest seems to be represented at the top of this column on a building found in Europe. But in Washington, D.C., up at the tops of the 72 columns of the National Archives building, we find nearly identical carvings, all perched beneath the throne of destiny itself. Could this somehow be a veiled reference to the secret destiny of America? Watching the strength of the American dollar decline, we consider America's founder, George Washington. Around his image on the face of the dollar is said to be an omega symbol, signifying the end. But what end? Many researchers have come to believe that the plan of these Luciferian societies is that, like the phoenix of old, the America that we know will ultimately be destroyed, and that from her ashes will be born a new world order.